Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast with Dotun and Tim Vickery.
Yeah. Look, today I'm not going to take the mickey out of Tim for the result at what used to be called White Hart Lane at the Emirates. Oh, yeah, it felt like they owned the whole of North London by that. But we won't talk about that yet, at least, Tim. And I'm not going to take the mickey out of you because you want to talk about the Copa Libertadores today, and you're always having a go at me that we don't take your tournaments very seriously over this side. That's not the case. We're going to before we proceed. Actually, I should get through the protocol. This is the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast. The Legendino Tim Vickery, as always, is in Rio. I'm in London, and we're talking about, amongst other things today, whatever you want to talk about globally, soccer-wise as well. Global Soccer Interactive is what we're doing today. And please do subscribe to the pod and follow us on your WhatsApp, or follow the podcast on WhatsApp and other mediums as well, and share it and give us the love if you can. Anyway, so back to proceedings, Tim. We have to, at some point during the next hour, talk about the magic that happened at Stamford Bridge, which I think is the beginning of a long rivalry in football between two 18-year-olds. It's 1-0 to Estevao, I would say, in that terms of that rivalry. But both Estevao and Yamal are compared on a daily basis to the legend that is Lionel Messi. That's what they call them, the new Messi. You know, on one side of the Atlantic, as Estevao was, on the other side of the Atlantic, as Lamine is and Estevao are now. But the reason why I think it's very crucial to talk, or to tell listeners why we need to get your perspective on this, is you saw both Estevao and Lionel Messi at a very young age. As I recall, you're the first person in British football to mention a little pigeon toad. You see, I remember your words. Pigeon toad. What was he, a 13, 14-year-old at that point that you saw him, first of all, play in Argentina? And you've done the same with Estevao. You've been talking about, between me and you, we call him Stephen, you know.
Yeah, Steve, the old mate, yes.
You've been talking about him, certainly since he was in nappies, have you?
Well, I saw his debut, and he scored a goal for Palmeiras. See, he is part of the story of this Copa Libertadores as well, because he starts the campaign in the Palmeiras team. I saw his debut against a little club from Uruguay called Liverpool. And it was obvious from his first start that he was going to be doing it against a rather famous small club with the same name. And lo and behold, his first goal in the Premier League comes against Liverpool. Yeah, Dotun, how nice to have you back. Welcome. And I'm so glad that you've come back from Africa with a more globalist view, with a less parochial view. Or is it Victor Headley I'm talking to?
No, yeah, you could be talking to Victor Headley if it was 20 years ago, the author of Yardi, but it's only me, unfortunately, this time. And look, Tim's sharing a private joke there. One of these days, I'll have the bottle to tell that story, but not today, if you don't mind. There's lots of other jokes to come, though. Talking of Africa, you'll be pleased to know that the most populous football shirt was... Go on, have a guess.
Arsenal.
That's right. Well done, you.
I've long suspected, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're the one that wanted a global perspective, and now you've got it.
Yeah,
the whole world.
Hoisted with my own petard, yes.
And I said that I wouldn't mention the, was it 4-1 in the end? Flipping out. Although the one thing you can say about it is that the best goal was scored by Tottenham. And we'll talk about Richarlison at some point, I hope so too. So where are we at with regards to the Copa Libertadores?
It's the big one. The final live on BBC 3, I think, on Saturday. I think it's a 9 p.m. kickoff your time. So you can go out before, and come back a little bit early, or you can ask the pub to put it on or whatever. And it is the biggest Libertadores final we've had in years and years and years, with the possibility to get even bigger. It's Flamengo against Palmeiras, Flamengo of Rio, Palmeiras of São Paulo. It will be the 7th consecutive Brazilian win, the 5th time in those 7 that we've had an all-Brazilian final. So Brazil is utterly dominant, and these two teams are utterly dominant in Brazil. They're fighting it out for the Brazilian title. It looked like it was going to be Palmeiras, but they're on a bad little run. And with 2 rounds to go, Flamengo have a 5-point advantage. So it's nearly done and dusted. So these two teams, including this year, they will have won 5 of the last 7 Libertadores titles. That's South America's Champions League. And 6 of the last 9 Brazilian championships. So they really are scooping the pool. These are the 2 clubs who have risen to the surface in Brazil. They have taken advantage of more money flowing in to Brazilian football. Flamengo are giants. In their case, it was just a case of getting their finances sorted out. And then with the immense size that they have a national following. They're probably the biggest club outside Europe. Palmeiras is more of a surprise because Palmeiras, it's historically the club of the Italian community in São Paulo. And here's a stat for you. São Paulo has more Italian descendants than any other city in the world, including Rome. So they've got quite a lot to pick from. But they're not the biggest club in São Paulo, which is Corinthians. But Corinthians have gone through mismanagement. They're in trouble with paying for their stadium. Palmeiras have a terrific stadium, very, very well managed. And one thing that these 2 clubs have in common is a model where they are producing stars for the European game, selling them, and using that to finance the players that they buy in. So Flamengo have produced Vinicius Jr., Lucas Paquetá, some others who haven't come off quite as much, but they've made money off. Palmeiras, Estevao, one of theirs. Endrick, one of theirs. Luis Guilherme's hardly getting on the field at West Ham, but he made a lot of money for them. Victor Hayes, a centre-back that Man City bought. They've loaned him out to Girona in Spain, so they're making money out of them. And the existence of the Club World Cup, I think, just rises this to another level. Because as a result of the Club World Cup, they made a lot of money off it. They've been able to go shopping and buy more. So they're buying in players. I mean, this year, for example, Flamengo have bought in Jorginho, late of Chelsea and also briefly of Arsenal. They've brought in players from Atletico Madrid, Saul, who was briefly at Chelsea, Samuel Lino. They've brought in Emerson Royale, once Tottenham's wing back, who is almost certainly going to be a reserve on Saturday. Palmeiras have brought in a centre forward called Victor Roque, who is the most expensive player in the history, the most expensive signing in the history of Brazilian football, and will certainly be going back to Europe in a couple of years with Premier League sides interested in him. They've brought in a couple from Forest, the goalkeeper Carlos Miguel, Paraguayan winger Ramon Sosa. They brought in Andreas Pereira from Fulham. Now that's really interesting because 4 years ago, these sides met in the final of the Libertadores. Andreas Pereira was playing for Flamengo, and he made the mistake that handed the title to Palmeiras. He's now playing for Palmeiras. So there are stories all over the place, and these sides are big and getting bigger. And the fact that the Club World Cup, I think, is now a consolidated part of the international calendar means that they have an opportunity to get bigger still. I imagine in the media work that I'll do around this game in the next couple of days, I imagine there will still be people in the English media who refer to the Rio Giants as Flamenco with a C, but they're not a Spanish dance. And very soon, that's not going to happen anymore. You know, when we were kids, Dotun, the only Brazilian club that we knew was Santos because of Pelé. Now you will know these clubs. They have a purchasing power and a visibility that means you will not be able to ignore them for much longer. So this is a clash of 2 giants. It's a massive, massive game. It's the biggest Libertadores final, I think, for at least 25 years between, as I say, 2 clubs who are big and getting bigger. So it's a mighty occasion that you're able to see live on the BBC 9 o'clock Saturday night.
I'll ask you in a moment who's going to win it, and you will know because you've been following these clubs forever and a day. But what you said, and I tell you, I know. Well, you're
I have to live here. I have to live here.
Yeah, like the Genie. You're going to have a chimney stack on your back or whatever. But look, it's from. I don't doubt for a moment what you say that these names will become household names. These teams will become household names in the very near future. It seems to me, because the moment you said Palmeiras had Estevao, for example, suddenly my ears pricked up. And it's almost as if their selling power is greater than their success in South American tournaments, at least. Because, I don't know who won the South American tournament last year, for example. I don't know who won the
So, all right, their selling power is bigger than their visibility. That's what you're saying.
This is what I'm trying to say. This is what I'm trying to say. It's kind of, we'll know those teams for all the wrong reasons. In terms of play, though, what can you tell us about the ways that they both attacking teams, I imagine?
I'll just come back on that briefly, because you're right. They're best known perhaps for the players that they sell. This is the way it works. They're selling stars to Europe. But like Del Shannon, I wonder if we're at the start.
Why didn't you just run away? Run away.
Yeah, I've got to give a hat to Larry, so I'm going to have to run away at some point.
I can't match that, mate.
No.
Apart from this hat I've got here.
Indeed. Yeah. I wonder if we're entering. This is the dawning of the age of Pan American Aquarius, because
we're going to have to take our clothes off then.
Indeed, yeah.
All of them. No shirts back there, Vickery.
Just we left with our hair. Thank God we've got some. Exactly. Because I think the tectonic plates might be about to move. Because these clubs, they're outgrowing South American football. And the future, I think, is Pan-American. Now, the logistical problems of this are enormous because the Americas are vast. But I think it's a matter of time before we get a Pan-American tournament up and running. And you get these big Brazilian clubs with the clubs from Major League Soccer and from Mexico. And Major League, the synergies are so obvious. Major League Soccer, it's moving in the right direction. It's making progress, but it hits that wall of not having tradition and credibility. And I've only been the fifth sport in its own country. South American football has history and credibility to burn. And you can just see the synergies of getting that together. Quite how you organise that, I don't know. There was an attempt by an Italian billionaire 9 years ago now to get a Pan-American thing up and running. But that was maybe premature because that was before the Brazilians had pulled away from the rest of South America. Brazil wasn't winning the Libertadores at that time. Now it's made the Libertadores its own private fiefdom, if you like. So I think we're in at the start of an era where the success of Flamengo and Palmeiras could lead to a Pan-American gig going on, which may possibly even be a rival pole to the dominance of European club football. So I think this is interesting times. In terms of the game, if you look at the records that these teams have had during the Libertadores, you would think that Flamengo are ultra defensive and Palmeiras are free scoring, because that's what the stats look like in this particular tournament. But that's really an inversion of what they are. And Flamengo had a strange Libertadores tournament. In the Brazilian Championship, which they're on the verge of winning, they are the free scoring side. They've got a problem on Sunday because the centre forward, Pedro, is injured. The fella who would probably play in his place, who's more of a converted winger, Plata from Ecuador, is suspended. So they're in a little bit of trouble right up front. Palmeiras, a fellow who many won't know, but you will. Oh, but you will, is the Palmeiras coach. He's called Abel Ferreira. He's Portuguese. He's been at Palmeiras for 5 years. No one is in charge of a Brazilian club for 5 years. It's unthinkable, but he's done it. And he keeps and what he reminds me of so much is a young Jose Mourinho. Firstly, because he's absolutely brilliant. Secondly, because he's unbearable. And he hasn't yet poked someone in the eye, but he's got close. And his behaviour on the touchline, he may well be Brazil coach now. if he just behaved himself a little bit better. But he always has a plan. Always has a plan, and he'll always surprise you with what he can do between games and inside games. When they last played each other just over a month ago in Rio, and it was 3-2 to Flamengo, and he came out to play he's playing two strikers now, which is unusual for him, but he's worked out that's the best way that he can get the most out of the attacking resources that he has. But obviously that weakens the side in other areas. And he came out to push high up, and Flamengo went direct. And they were 3-1 up at half-time. Palmeiras got one back with the last kick of the game. This game, I think, will be very different. Firstly, I think Palmeiras will be more cautious, not least because it's the end of the season, and there's some tired limbs out there. I think he'll be more cautious. I think he'll play wait and see. And Flamengo don't have the centre forward Pedro, who was outstanding in that 3-2 win. So my fear for it is it could be an intriguing tactical battle, but one that is nowhere near as open as the last game. So it may not be as free flowing as you'd want it to be, but with so much at stake, it's going to be significant and intriguing, whatever happens. But I do fear we might not get the full-on spectacle. We might get Palmeiras holding back and looking for their moment, and Flamengo trying to find a way to pass their way through.
What's there to play for would be my question. Are they playing to be South American champions? Are they playing to get one over on each other? Or that would be more Palmeiras, wouldn't it? Or trying to get one over Flamengo.
All that and the above. The winner will be the first Brazilian team to 4 Libertadores titles. So they'll be the Brazilian kings of the Libertadores. If Flamengo win, that means Palmeiras, it looks like, that unless there's a miracle, they're not going to win the Brazilian league. They'll have gone through the year without a title. That's a disaster. That's not good at all. So there's so much at stake. It's a relatively new rivalry, this one. But over the last 9-10 years, this is the main... It's become the biggest game in South America. And we had Boca Juniors River Plate earlier this month. And that's obviously the big one in terms of rivalry. But it's become a little bit of a sideshow. River can't make much progress in the Libertadores. They keep getting knocked out by Brazilians. They may not even be in next year's Libertadores. And Boca got knocked out in the qualifying rounds. So it looked quite melancholy. Boca won it, but the technical level was very low compared to the technical level that we're going to see on Saturday between these two teams. So again, this is another worry. There's almost too much at stake. So, but whatever happens, it's dramatic. It's history. It could be fantastic. It could, especially if we get early goals. It could be amazing. It could be intense and attritional. But whatever happens, it's going to be great.
Okay, because I was expecting, or it could be, but I'm glad you didn't go there. Okay, we've got a question from Glenn, and do feel free to join us and throw in your questions.
Oh yes, yeah. Glenn is one of our World Football Phone Line listeners. Glenn lives in the States, but he has Ecuadorian heritage. And one of Glenn's favorite little Twitter things is just to say Varzil. He always thinks that the Brazilians are getting the benefit of VAR. What happens in this game is that Abel, the Palmeiras coach, will inevitably spend the whole game moaning that Flamengo are getting the benefit of the refereeing decisions, and Flamengo might well do likewise. So if both teams are unhappy with the referee, that probably means the referee's doing a very good job. It's
not a bad question, though. I mean, you wonder to what extent the Brazilians play for VAR, as it were.
Yeah. This is, I mean, the Brazilian perspective is that the Argentines always get the benefit of the refereeing decisions. The Argentine perspective is that the Brazilians always get the benefit of the refereeing decisions.
Yeah. The safest thing is to play your football outside of the scope of VAR. I always think it's only a goal if VAR cannot, play a role in it. Anyway, that's
there were 4 times on Sunday in North London where VAR didn't intervene, and it probably should have done.
So we can go there in a moment, please, believe me. Okay, so thank you for setting up the final of the Copa Libertadores. If anybody else wants to comment on that, feel free in the usual questions slots that we've got on your screen.
Join me and Pat Nevin on Saturday. Why not?
Oh, so you're doing it for BBC?
Yeah. I won't be in vision. It'll be so it's not sound and vision.
Pat Nevin won't be in vision either. It's not like let's put Tim in vision but keep Pat Nevin out. Just come on, man. There's oh, by the way, I'm going to keep reminding you to subscribe on the channel if you haven't subscribed already, or join.
And there's a WhatsApp group, I'm led to understand.
WhatsApp group. Thank you for mentioning that. Just in case I forget, make sure you have my back covered at all times. Okay, let's talk about this. You see, I don't think the British football press have pitched this as they should have. Because Well,
that's because they haven't read my article on the BBC website, because I haven't written it yet. But I'll write it today, send it in, and it'll be up. They wanted to end of business Thursday, so I think it'll be up on Friday. And
make sure you add this article was inspired by Dotun Adebayo's great reasoning on the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast. Anyway, no, but they previewed it. They did preview it as a match of the greatest, best teenagers in the world. And they valued the teenagers, or they talked about the current valuation. Lamine Yamal worth something like 300 million, according to the Dreamers. But Estevao only worth about half of that, thereabouts. And you think to yourself, well, that's probably gone up a bit. I don't think Lamine Yamal's Lamine Yamal's value has sunk, although he was kept out of the game. He was kept out of the game, but we've seen what he can do. Let's go with the Messi comparisons first of all. Remind us of when you first saw Messi and what the comparison of first seeing Estevao is to that.
Yeah, well, I first saw Messi, he was 17 in an under-20 tournament in Colombia, start of 2005. And interestingly, when Estevao was coming up youth ranks, first with Cruzeiro before they had financial problems and he went to Palmeiras. You know what his nickname was? Messinho.
Oh.
Little Messi.
Oh, Messi, okay. Yeah.
And
what did they see in him at that age, though, that made the comparison? Was it just he was good, or did he dribble like Messi, or what?
I think it's not just the talent, and part of it is the talent. The ball is tied to his foot. One thing I think that is unbelievable with Estevao is his weaker foot, and I think his weaker foot is better than Messi's weaker foot. The goal he scored yesterday, the goal he scored against Chelsea in the Club World Cup, we were still with Palmeiras, from an impossible angle, off his wrong foot. So in that sense, I think he's better. But I think the two things that, I'm not saying that he is better or will be better than Messi, but I think he's fabulous. But I think that the two things that stand out, one is just the natural ability and the fact that the ball is part of him. But the other, and this was one of the things that was so apparent to me, seeing Messi for the first time, nearly 21 years ago, my God, was he knew, even then, where to hurt the opposition. Now, it's not flicks and tricks 40 yards from goal. That awareness of space, the space that he wanted to attack. And I saw this really clearly a couple of years ago when Luis Suarez came to Brazilian football, spent a year in Brazilian football. Now, he's operating on dodgy knees. He's not what he was, but just that appreciation of the space. He was so far ahead of everyone else, because he just knew where he wanted the ball to be, like 3 or 4, like a chess player who knows 3 or 4 moves ahead. And Messi had that, and Estevao had that. When that first start that he made in the Libertadores, April of last year, against this team from Uruguay called Liverpool, the goal he scored was a header at the far post. And look at him. He looks like he's going to blow over in a strong breeze. And he's against the Uruguayan side. They're obviously going to be rough and tough and a little bit physical. He has no right to get in at the far post and score with a header. He's got no right to do that. But he did it. And so it's not just the ability. It's not just the skill and the technical ability. It's the thinking. It's where am I going to go? Where can I most hurt the opposition? And allied to that, it's the strength of character. I remember the coach at Palmeiras, Abel Ferreira. It was after he'd been in the first team for 3 or 4 months. And in a post-match press conference, Abel was practically crying and saying, look, I'm trying hard not to say this because it's almost not fair to say, but I can't hold it back. He is different from anything I've ever seen. And Abel had a good playing career as a right back in Portuguese football, coached in Europe, was the coach of Endrick at Palmeiras. And now he's saying that Estevao is different from anything I've ever seen. He was pleading with the club. Don't sell him. Let me keep him a little while longer. You know, obviously in vain. That wasn't going to happen. But one of the things that Abel really emphasized was just the strength of character. That he's so emotionally well balanced. Because, you know, it's a huge thing. There is no profession like this in the world where you go from being an unknown or with some buzz about you to being on the field playing for a big team with thousands in the stadium and millions on TV watching and judging your work and telling you on social media you're a pile of crap, you know. And I don't know how they cope with that transition. Yeah, but I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. For him, for Estevao, it's the easiest thing in the world. And Abel would say, look, he would use him as an example to all the youth players at Palmeiras. Look at him. He'll try something. It doesn't come off. It doesn't affect him in the slightest. In the slightest. He'll do it again, or he'll do it better.
With a smile on his face.
With a smile on his face, yeah. And one of his first games for Chelsea, he went for the flick and the trick in his own half, and he gave a goal away early in the game. Didn't bother him a bit. You know, a few minutes later, he's setting up his first goal for Chelsea. And there's just ice in his veins. And I remember exactly this time last year, it's the penultimate round of the Brazilian Championship. Palmeiras have to win to have a chance of winning the title in the last round. It is the 89th minute. They're drawing. He wins a free kick on the edge of the area. Now, how many free kicks on the edge of the area these days do you see scored? You don't see that many of them. This is the 89th minute. He must score to keep the championship alive. He's got a terrific goalkeeper there, and he just bangs it in as if it's the easiest thing in the world under that kind of pressure. And he's taking penalties for Brazil. Not a care in the world. So you've got those three things together. You've got the unbelievable skill. You've got the awareness of the game and where to hurt the opposition. And you've got this ice in his veins. And he does it with a smile in his face, which is absolutely captivating. So he is, I think, the best thing to come out of Brazil since Neymar. But he doesn't carry any of the baggage. And I think part of that is on purpose. Part of that is looking at the potential pitfalls that the career of Neymar have exemplified. And you just want, if he can steer clear of injury, what might he do? I remember a few months ago on this weekly live internet transmission that I do in Portuguese for a Brazilian site called Trivela, we were saying, you know what? I think Estevao's going to be more important to the World Cup than Neymar. And blimey, the flack that we got and I got for saying that. You know,
Neymar.
and now it looks as if Neymar's not going to play again this year. And his future is in doubt. Another injury. And there's been no sign yet. We're still waiting. We've been waiting all year for the old Neymar to appear. At the moment, his chances of going to the World Cup are slim. Meanwhile, Estevao has scored 5 goals for Brazil between September and November. And, you know, Ancelotti's first game in charge was the first start of it. He gave him his first start. So obviously loves him, and he loves him all the more now. So, and never forget, you naughty English people, never forget how lucky you are to be able to watch this every week. You have, I think for the first time, you have a genuine Brazilian superstar who has chosen not to go to Real Madrid or Barcelona. He's chosen to come to the Premier League. Please don't take this for granted.
Yeah, okay. Let's bring our good friend Amos Murphy from the Express and the City podcast into the conversation. I'm sure, Amos, you've got thoughts on this as well. We'll come back to City and everybody else, but you saw Stamford Bridge alight yesterday. Well, it was supposed to be alight by two wonder kids. I think we saw the best of one and not the best of the other. Not to say at all that Lamine Yamal is anything but one of the greatest footballers that we've ever witnessed. However, did you pitch it in the way that I pitched it? Like, we've witnessed the first of many, many rivalries between these two. You know, this is like Ali and Foreman or Ali and Frazier. Not only that, you know, it can be like Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer, whoever, McEnroe, Connor. And of course in football, Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Lionel Messi. Did you pitch it like that as well? Did you see it like that?
Speaking of naughty English kids, evening guys. Hope we're doing okay. It did feel quite seminal. I feel like you've got these two mercurial talents, but also, you know, players who, especially for Yamal, who I think is a little bit more established than Estevao so far. Although, you know, the evidence of last night and the game on Tuesday and also this season maybe sort of swinging in the opposite direction. But you know, it was a moment. I think we will look back on it, and you can go back and, you know, all of the great sporting moments, even in the modern era, you know, Sinner Alcaraz in tennis, and it does feel like sport has a canny knack of, when you think the guys who have been at the top, you know, tennis has had this over the last couple of years. Djokovic sort of coming towards the end of his career, Nadal dropping out and retiring, Federer, Murray. You feel like, oh, how do these guys replace? Sport has a funny way of kind of producing these next gen talents, and look, maybe the Ronaldo Messi comparison will ring true. I feel like that is almost, you know, that to fill that up will just be incredible if that happens, and I doubt it will. But it's interesting. I think on one of your other many shows, Dotun, not to sort of break the fourth wall in the Dotun multiverse, but I think on the content you guys were speaking about how I think we have to be careful in the sense that the average age of a footballer's career might be rapidly dropping. I can't remember exactly who was making the point, but this is maybe one of the downsides. You know, we have seen these wonderful teenage talents burst onto our scene. Maybe we get 10 years, 15 years of them, but given the intensity of European football right now, we kind of maybe have to come to expect the best players in the world to be teenagers, because of they're the kind of the guys that haven't been damaged and have the scar tissue yet. I don't know. It does feel like we're onto a new frontier, but yeah, I mean, you've got to enjoy it for what it is. It was fantastic.
You know, I could go beyond just the sporting comparisons, because, you know, there are musical ones as well. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones, Blur and Oasis. And, you know, there's always been these rivalries that come up, partly because it ain't no fun if your mates can't have none, as some of the rappers would say, to be the one at the top lonely. But it's also because the rivals say, well, hang on a second, hang on. I'm after you, mate. I'm after your friend. I'm going to be chasing you right to the bitter end. And I feel like it's 1-0 to Estevao on Tuesday's evidence. You know, the first of these rivalries between these two, and I'm sure there will be so many more. You know, whether it compares to Messi and Ronaldo, that's for the stars to define and decide. But I look at this as a seminal moment where Lamine Yamal's got to go back and realise that he was supposed to be the co-star on the big stage, and he fell short of that, not because of his talents, but because Chelsea had a game plan that he just couldn't get out of. Whereas clearly Barcelona had a game plan for Estevao, and he just like walked through it.
Yeah, I think big questions in Spain are being asked of Hansi Flick, because we obviously saw them get to the Champions League semi-final, and to be fair, they did so well in the league phase last year, finishing second behind Liverpool. And there was this kind of idea that, well, with Yamal fresh off the back of a European Championship victory with Spain, you know, they had this this unbelievable crop of talent, and it feels like they haven't learned from those mistakes. A very wily Inter Milan, obviously come through that incredible semi-final. And look, everybody wanted the PSG versus Barcelona final. I feel like given the form that PSG were in at the time, there is every chance they might have even stuck 5 past Barcelona, because Inter Milan's flaws are not the same, or weren't the same as Barcelona's flaws. And I don't know if Hansi Flick has necessarily addressed the issues that maybe saw Inter Milan progress into that Champions League final last year. The kamikaze high line is good if you can make it work, and the benefits on paper certainly maybe outweigh the negatives, but in practice it just seems like something that has so often over the last few months shot Barcelona in the foot, and it didn't look like the team that made the Champions League semi-final. If you to ask us now, do you think Barcelona will be 5 minutes away from making the Champions League final as they were last season? I'd say absolutely not, because they've got to work through so much, and yeah, obviously Yamal is a big part of that. He's had a bit of a rocky campaign, managing his minutes, obviously a bit of back and forth with the Spanish national team as well, in terms of how best do we handle him, does he need to be playing these matches, etc., etc. For Chelsea, I think you have to praise them, because Enzo Maresca, you could make the argument, was maybe a couple of matches away from getting the sack last season. If they don't get in the Champions League, and if they don't win the Conference League, which felt like a foregone conclusion at the start of the season, they then go over to the Club World Cup. How much importance do you put in that? That's up to the individual, but it was still a decent victory for them, beating European champions PSG in the final. He's found himself in a situation where he's going into a game against Arsenal at the weekend where they'll be 3 points off the top of the table. They've just beaten Barcelona and they're looking like, one of the top teams in Europe. So I think you've got to give Maresca and Chelsea the credit. This is all without Cole Palmer as well, which for the Cole Palmer team, as they were being dubbed about 12 months ago, that's awfully impressive.
Do you know, that's a really important point, because you mentioned Hansi Flick, the Barcelona coach. Do you think that Hansi Flick specifically, but Barcelona as a team, rely too much on Lamine Yamal? He's played almost every minute of every game for the last year or whatever it is. Whereas if you're making the comparison with his peer group, his age peer group, Estevao, Chelsea don't rely on him. They bring him on as a sub. They don't overplay him. He's played certainly less than half of the games that Lamine Yamal has played. I wonder if that isn't a marked difference there. Chelsea have got a Cole Palmer, and they've got other players to come in, striking force-wise, whereas Barcelona rely on this mercurial talent all the time.
Yeah, they've certainly lent into him, and you can understand why. And it's a bit of a catch-22 for Barcelona, because he's so good, and obviously integral to Spain winning the Euros, integral to Barcelona doing what they did last season. You take him out of the team, obviously they're a worse team, they're a worse outfit, because he is one of the best players in the world. I know Guardiola has spoken about it so much in comparison to Rodri's injury last season. Like, of course City are worse off when you take Rodri out of the team. You take good players out of the team, they're going to be worse off. But like, how that manifests itself when he's constantly playing and he doesn't have the sort of night that you're expecting, or you've come to expect of him. I do think you look around the team though, it isn't a great Barcelona team, and I think maybe they set standards high last season, making it so far in the Champions League. I do believe elsewhere a few of the other bigger clubs were caught out by the new format. Barcelona seemed to adapt to it well last season, but you're looking off the bench, the players that they brought on. Okay, of course, Rafinha had a fantastic season last year. He's had a little bit of injury problems. Marcus Rashford, I am a massive Marcus Rashford fan despite his allegiances, but I at the same time recognise that he can blow hot and cold. And Dani Olmo, in terms of the attacking options, a serviceable player. Is he sort of where Barcelona necessarily want him to be? Possibly not when you're chasing the game. So look, I do think there's certainly aspects of that. I think you compare, obviously, and unfortunately you have to do, the investment both teams have had. Yes, of course, Barcelona, a lot of it is self-inflicted, but over the last 5 years, I think it's something like 300 odd million euros compared to Chelsea's ding, 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 ding. I don't even know at this point where we're at with Chelsea's sort of transfer investment. And you, again, say that about pretty much every Premier League team. So, look, a damaging night for Barcelona and Hansi Flick. I think big questions will be asked of him, in the last few matches of this league phase. Can they get back into the top 8? Can they avoid a playoff? Because It can be, who knows who they might draw, and it can be a little bit unpredictable if they fall into that. And obviously Real Madrid in crisis, but at the same time doing really well in La Liga, which is probably speaks more to the noise around Real Madrid as an institution. And it has been a difficult season for Barca, so it'll be interesting to see how they sort of attack the second half of the campaign.
Tim, do you want to come in, or do you want me to carry on?
Go ahead. Yeah, this is.
I've got a million and one questions. In any case,
this is Amos territory. So in the absence of Andy, it's going to have to be Amos and Dotun.
And I think it was Andy Brassel that mentioned that the age limit, or the average age for footballers, has gone down and down and down and down. But on the other thing, Man City, your team then. Let's talk about that. Should we talk about last night first of all? Did you expect to win in Germany or not?
To be brazen, probably, yeah. Obviously, Leverkusen third in the Bundesliga. I think a lot of people remember at the start of the season when they sacked Erik ten Hag after 3 matches, and the sort of it kind of builds this narrative that Leverkusen no longer good, when in actual case that isn't what's happened. They've rebuilt really well, and they've had a decent couple of months. But I think at the same time, City, you expect them to get a victory. Look, I tried over the last 24 hours not to be reactive, but I think, as crazy as it sounds, it's up there with one of the maddest things Guardiola's done as Manchester City manager, to make 10 changes for a Champions League fixture against an objectively good opponent. It was wild, and it manifested itself. It certainly did. I think it doesn't matter if you were bringing in, a prime Pele alongside a Maradona and Beckenbauer. You make 10 changes to any team, you can't expect a coherent, functional performance, especially when those players have been out of the team and not necessarily been performing or playing as much. So yeah, crazy. It's left City with a little bit of work to do in the Champions League. Hopefully it's just a one-off for Mr. Guardiola.
I do have a question about nominally a Man City player. I'm going to take you back 2 years. The Under-17 World Cup. Estevao's there playing for Brazil. And they crash out to Argentina. It's 3-0. And all 3 goals are scored by a River Plate youngster called Claudio Il Diablito Echeverri, who then goes to City.
Thank you, Tim.
And is then... and at that point, and I saw him at the start of last year in the South American Under-20s, and he was head and shoulders the best player in the tournament. What's happened with him? Why is he gone? Why has he been moved on? On loan to Germany, and how's he doing? And why? Because at that point, the day belongs to him and not to Estevao.
Yeah.
Why has the future belonged more to Estevao than to him?
It's frustrating, and I know modern football fandom, a lot of it is defending your club come hook or by crook. But if I was if I was advising Claudio Echeverri, I'd have told him to steer clear from Manchester City with a barge pole, because it seems like there is an increasing number of these talented players, and understandably they get turned by the bright lights of the Premier League. Who knows what's being promised, who knows what's being said about, you can come in, we'll turn you into this, that, the other. But we saw him remarkably crazy. He made his debut at 1-0 down in the FA Cup final to Crystal Palace, which I'm speaking about Guardiola maddening decisions. That's probably up there as well. He does get quite a little bit of minutes in the Club World Cup, and there was a whisper that maybe he would be in the squad for the rest of the season. Then the loan talk pops up, and to be fair, I believe it was his camp that pushed for a move to Bayer Leverkusen. The dominoes, the house of cards falls with Erik ten Hag, and it's you spend all summer recruiting, and then suddenly you bring in a new manager in September. That has its own issues. He's not played anywhere near enough as he should have done in the Bundesliga. Overall, it's 8 appearances across both the Champions League and the Bundesliga. In fact, he's played the same amount of matches in the Champions League as he has the league, which is stark in itself. And yeah, it's frustrating because, like you say, I remember seeing him at that recent Youth World Cup, and he was frighteningly good, like genuinely frighteningly good. And there was an unfair nickname, but still a nickname, that Escher Messi was his new sort of tag in sort of relation. Obviously, it's easy to do with him being a sort of a on the smaller side Argentine with a little bit of trickery, but at the same time he was kind of the next guy coming out of the Argentine conveyor belt of talent, and it's just not worked out for him. There's talk that he could return to River Plate in January, which will obviously for them be the start of the 2026 Argentine season. But River Plate, which I'm sure I think we have a little bit of a segment. Yeah, they're in an institutional crisis themselves. So look, it's sad for him because he's a talent. I really hope that he can fall on his feet. I doubt it will be at City, which is a shame because he is really talented. But
I thought he looked really good in a City shirt. No, instantly, nearly changed the FA Cup final. Had moments in the Club World Cup. You're thinking, that hole that was left by the sale of Julian Alvarez. Well, he could fill that hole. I don't understand why they've decided to get rid of him.
No, me neither.
Look, and I'm not worthy, football-wise at least, to criticise Pep Guardiola, but. You've already mentioned, him playing a weaker side against Leverkusen in the Champions League, and I can kind of, when you try to understand, because you know that the guy knows football, and you're thinking, so why is he doing this? The only thing I can think of is that you've got more serious issues in the Premier League than at this stage of the Champions League.
Well, he's got to administer the whole season, isn't he? So exactly. I'm sure he's thinking of March when he makes these decisions.
Totally.
10 changes is wild. It's everything all at once, basically.
It's a new team, isn't it? B team. But the loss against Newcastle at the weekend, did he not like that? I think he spent about 10 minutes on the pitch berating everybody, and got into a bit of a dialogue with Bruno Guimaraes also. Don't know if it was in Spanish or American Portuguese, as it were, but what is going on?
Do you know what's funny? The reaction after that Newcastle game was more positive than negative, in the sense that, look, defensively there were fragilities and there were issues, but City created a whole lot of chances. Elephant in the room, there were one or two referee decisions, which from a City perspective you could maybe argue went against them, but that happens. You're coming away from it going, you know what, it's a little bit of a blip. There's a young team, there's a rebuild going on. It is what it is. For me, why I dub it such a big mistake from Guardiola, the Leverkusen game, to change 10 players in, like I say, in any sort of squad is maddening. But City have worked so hard this season to build up a bit of a head of steam. With obviously last season was, relatively speaking, poor for their standards. So to have that sort of momentum quashed by what I believe, and I'm sure he will in retrospect believe, a stupid mistake. Fair enough. Make 5 changes, make 6 changes if you need to, but keep a little bit of that core team that has been sort of chugging along and getting results. So yeah, look, Leeds, Fulham, Sunderland, and then Real Madrid follow in the next couple of weeks. So that will be 3, you would say, winnable Premier League matches, but I think they're a little bit of a target put on City's back given the last couple of results. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, Sunderland and no pushovers. I don't need to tell you that. Out of those 3, anyway, I could see them getting a result there. But okay, the only, I suppose, caveat in all of this, the woes of Man City, is that Man United have been a laughing stock, not least. Well, there you see, you've done it again.
On cue. It's ingrained. Yeah, habitual.
But to have had a whole match, virtually a whole match, at least 80 minutes or virtually 80 minutes of the match, playing against 10 men Everton, and they didn't really huff and puff, really. No, I was going to say they huffed and puffed, but they didn't, did they? They just kind of like, no, let's try this shot. No, let's try this shot. And they just didn't get anywhere. It was well, is that one of the most farcical performances by Man United that you've seen this season?
I was trying to wrap my brain, and I will put objective journalist hat on here and try and be as serious as possible. But like, where does that rank amongst Ruben Amorim's sort of struggling performances. And like, I followed him a little bit when he was at Sporting, and I was genuinely intrigued by him. And obviously, like, that Premier League jump is a big jump, but it feels like so far there have been that unwillingness to bend tactically at times. And I think you go down to, so you have a man up, a man advantage for, I think it was the 15th minute, the Everton player gets sent off. So, you know, for the best part, if not more, 3/4 of the match, do you still need to be playing a nominal back five? No, I would say that's absolutely not the case. Exactly. You do not need 3 central defenders on the pitch at that point. It just doesn't make sense. I think anyone playing the video game Football Manager or whatever would immediately make that change. So to see a Premier League manager stick by it, I thought that was possibly up there with one of the the biggest errors, because look, getting beaten by other Premier League opponents, it is what it is. Grimsby in the cup upsets happen. You have such a golden sort of opportunity at home. I think United would have finished the weekend or the match week in the Champions League spots had they beaten Everton, and they've not done that, I don't believe, since 2022-23 season. So that was a massive opportunity. And again, it feels like whenever these tasks have come up in front of Ruben Amorim so far in his Man United tenure, he is finding more and more spectacular ways to fail. So
but he's blaming it on the players. He wasn't blaming himself.
Yeah, and I don't like. He's a year into the job. Like, you know, at what point do you have to sort of shoulder responsibility? Because it's okay doing that in the first couple of months when you've got a new squad of players that maybe aren't into sort of buying into your ideas. The guy's had a full pre-season and now he's been in the job 12 months. I mean, I don't know. It's not my sort of call to make, but it feels like a ticking time bomb.
I can. You know, like you said about a moment or two ago, we're talking about the Barcelona squad or whatever. You know, this ain't the great Barcelona squad. You can see Manchester United. I mean, I couldn't see which player was going to get them out of that 1-0 hole on Monday night. I just couldn't see which of the players could do it. And Ruben Amorim virtually said, "Look, I've got some workhorses here, and I need some thoroughbreds." You know, he virtually said that. He said that, you know, where are the kind of quality players that I need? I would argue that several of those players came to Man United with quality, and something's happened along the way, and it's not just under Ruben Amorim's.
Well, they all show their quality as soon as they leave United, don't they?
True, exactly. Point in case, basically.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, you know, who would have thought, that he would go to Spain and sort of light up the La Liga there, amongst others. But is there something more fundamental that's wrong with? I know we go back to the ownership and all of that, but that having somewhat transpired into a different, you know, perspective or different scenario, I wonder if there isn't more that's rotten in the state of Manchester United's Denmark.
Yeah, I totally buy into that, and I think part of it is, look, I was trying to do the maths the other day, and the last time Man United won a league title was in 2013. So if you can realistically say children maybe start to remember, you know, like football occasions, football moments at maybe the age of 7, I think you're talking like 20-year-olds nowadays would just about remember the last time Man United won a league title. Yet they carry the same gravitas as a team that is almost constantly winning. And I think, you know, part of that is obviously understandable. They are a gigantic, gargantuan club. But from a footballing point of view, at what point do we kind of say, well, no, this isn't, as Gary Neville likes to sort of parade, this isn't Manchester United. You know, it's a totally different footballing institution. Speaking about briefly Real Madrid and how they're kind of in this sort of faux crisis because they're only top of the La Liga table by a couple of points. You know, that is a team with objectively high standards. You know, United have slipped far from that. So maybe we shouldn't be as shocked when they don't manage to be an attritional Everton side, even if they do go down to 10 men. I do feel like mentality-wise, that does the ghost of Man United past, to make it a little bit festive, does haunt them at times, because they are obviously playing in the shadows of what was one of the best teams under Alex Ferguson in most people's living memory. But it seems like they just can't shake it, and maybe it's going to need something a little bit like Arteta at Arsenal, where I don't know exactly how, but again, institutionally, I feel like it runs a little bit deeper at United.
Arsenal have always been strong institutionally, but Tim, how long does it take for a club, as Amos says, that were once the glory club, and there are examples of this all across Europe, aren't they? From once upon a time, Ajax, for example. Who would have thought this ain't the same? This ain't the Ajax we grew up with, let alone the Red Star Belgrades and all those other teams from the Eastern Bloc once upon a time. Well, you could even say Olympique Marseille at the time when Platini was playing for them. That was like one of the big teams of Europe. And now, when was the last time that they won a title, even in France, with PSG being their big shadow? But how long does it take for the reality to sink in, not just amongst the public? Public perception is one thing, and media perception, but also amongst players that, hang on, this ain't the Man United. People will talk about Brian Mbeumo. There was this image of him at the beginning of the season when Man United were losing left, right, and centre, of him sort of like looking on the pitch as if, well, where have I come to? Oh, have I made a mistake? Did I take the wrong turning off the M6 or something? How long does it take for that perception to disappear amongst players that this ain't the team that I thought it was once upon a time?
Well, there's a limit, there's a cushion there to how far they can fall, isn't it? Because they're part of the Premier League. So and they still have the capacity to attract big name players. Mateus Cunha, for example, has decided to go there. So I think they're much more protected from their own incompetence than they were in the 70s, the early 70s, when they went down, and when Tottenham went down, and so on. I think there's a limit to how far they can fall these days.
Boca Juniors.
And they are.
I was going to say Boca Juniors. You talked earlier. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Well, River Plate got relegated a few years back. So there is a kind of limit. It must have an effect. Because, as Amos said, you're now getting to the age where the players, when they were kids, will start to lose that memory of United as a giant. Although that can work the other way. When Cantona, for example, I'm sure Cantona absolutely relished the challenge, of the upturned collar. You know what? I can take this club back to what it used to be, But there were lots of players for a while at United who shriveled under that history during the 70s and 80s. You get a Cantona or two, and come on. And you still have, because they're in the Premier League, they have the financial ballast to be able to pull that off.
Having said that, the point I wanted to make about River Plate and Boca was that their demise, as you've often said, is partly because of the dominance of Brazilian football in South America, and you could argue their demise is part of the existential problems of Argentinian.
Well, they're a massive problem. I mean, they should, with the money that they made from the Club World Cup, they should be absolutely bossing it, And Boca have improved markedly since Leandro Paredes came back home. But the Boca River Super Classico at the start of this month, Boca won it. But the technical level was deplorable. Really was.
Tell me about it.
It was like a third division game or something. It was quite sad to see. It is difficult to run football in Argentina because, and historically, everything is Buenos Aires, and the rest of the country timidly started to get a look in kind of late 60s, and so you've developed a football infrastructure where there are so many clubs in Buenos Aires. They're neighborhood clubs, but they're big clubs. And one of them just won the Europa League equivalent, the Sudamericana, Lanús, who proudly boast of being the biggest neighborhood club in the world. But they're a neighborhood club. And now, in recent years, Argentine football is trying to nationalize. It's a big country. It's a big country, Argentina. But in footballing and politically, sometimes it looks like this tiny little, this like weak little infrastructure supporting a massive head, which is Buenos Aires. But they're trying to nationalize, which means that forces are emerging. Tucumán in the north, Talleres from Cordoba, who play in front of big crowds quite often now. How do you do it? How do you keep all of these little neighborhood clubs in Buenos Aires? How do you keep them going? How can they retain their status while also opening a door to other clubs from around this giant country? And the formula that they found is 30 clubs in the first division, which makes everything very, very unwieldy. But at least there's space for all the neighbourhood clubs and the clubs from outside Buenos Aires. But it provides them with... So how do you organise a championship for 30 clubs? How on earth do you do it? I know. We'll have 2 separate championships a year with a league phase followed by a knockout phase. That's what we do. But with 30 clubs, you're almost guaranteed mediocrity. And they keep trying to invent titles. And they did last week. It was unbelievable. What they did was
crazy.
I mean, what they did, because you have 2 separate champions a year, the champions of the first tournament and the second tournament, and they decided that we're going to have another champion as well for the clubs in the 2 league phases. The club that accumulates the most points, they become the champion of the league. Now, there's a reason that they did this. Because that club was Rosario Central with Di Maria. And the comeback of Di Maria has been amazing. It's been fabulous, and he's a national hero. And crowds, wherever they go, have been paying... No visiting fans, usually. So crowds, wherever they go, have been paying tribute to him. Fidel, Noodle, that's his nickname. Because little, slim little Fidel. So the game's already happened, right? And then after the games have happened, the Argentine FA decide, we're going to award a title to the club who've accumulated most points. So Rosario Central won a title that they didn't even know that they were fighting for.
The photos are crazy in the boardroom, just being handed overnight the trophy, and it is, and Tim, you will know much better being in close proximity to Argentina in South America, but they are specifically in a football context teetering on the edge of chaos a lot of the times, and typically the response has been, as you would expect, just sheer and utter outrage. And by all accounts, I've spoken to a few people that I know in Argentina, just got back from Buenos Aires as well, and they're saying, like, we genuinely had no idea. The inner circle was the only sort of people who had knowledge that this was going to be a thing, and it is sparked utter outrage towards an Argentine FA president, Claudio Tapia, who is already under mass pressure. And obviously, Di Maria, one of the figureheads of the 2022 World Cup, there was murals in parts of Argentina being defaced because they just see it as this connection to...
It's killed Di Maria. It's killed his comeback. It's really sad because he was so popular up until the moment when they give him this title. And that's why they invented a title, to give him a title.
I think he said in an interview a week before or something, like, one of my last career goals is to win a title with Rosario. And lo and behold, you wake up one day and it's an invented title.
One club went against it. One club.
Yes, this is great.
It's Estudiantes, right? It just so happens that the next match afterwards, it's the first round of the knockout stage, is Rosario Central against Estudiantes. Okay, it's a knockout game, one leg in Rosario's stadium. So there's no visiting fans. Estudiantes have to make a guard of honor for the new champions, Rosario Central, right, as they walk out on the pitch. So what the Estudiantes players do is they turn their backs. They make this guard of honor, but with their backs turned to make it perfectly clear. Funny. And this is clearly all of this has had a negative influence on Rosario Central, who hadn't lost a game with Di Maria on the pitch, because then they go and lose. They lose 1-0, meaning that Estudiantes have just knocked the Argentine champions out of the Argentine Championship. It's totally bizarre. Totally bizarre.
Estudiantes, by the way, who, and this obviously points to the chaos in the system, lost more games in the second half of the season than they won. and they come up against the team who, and to be fair, like Rosario accumulated the most points in 2025. For most European or anglicised football fans, that is what a league champion usually turns out to be. It just so happens you can't invent the trophy a week after the season finishes.
How about a trophy? A trophy. How about the Premier League is awarded to the team that scored the best goal from the longest range on Sunday? It's that kind of thing. Yeah.
It's
We'll take that.
I've got a better one. Let the Premier League season be awarded to the team that's closest to where I live. So
Fair enough. Works for me.
Oh my goodness. We can have a lot of fun with this. As long as the rights haven't been bought yet, I think us three should write the script. We'll this time next year, we will be millionaires. If not, I'll award you both a trophy. It's been amazing. We have to bring this conversation to an abrupt end now. Thank you for watching the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast. Amos Murphy is with us. How can we follow you on the City podcast?
City Ramble is a City podcast. Yesterday's episode was typically a little bit of the Argentine flair, just sheer passion and head loss. But Amos Murphy elsewhere talking and rambling football as usual.
And Legend, I'll catch up with you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for the next episode of the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast.
Oh, you won't. We haven't got any till next week, I think.
Really?
Have we?
Oh, thank you.
I think we've only got this week. Yeah.
I went all the way to Africa to find and to come back from Africa to find this news out. So
I'm a busy man tomorrow. So the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast will resume next week. Forget what he just said.
Yeah, you know what I just said. In fact, find out by following us on the WhatsApp group, the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast WhatsApp group, and don't forget to subscribe. See you all next time.
Get in touch with the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast on Twitter at BrazilShirtPod, or you can email us BrazilianShirtNamePod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate and tell a friend. The Brazilian Shirt Name podcast is an 1129 production.